Good morning, guys. Welcome back to another video. We had to talk about yesterday because yesterday was... I don't even know what yesterday was yet. I don't think my head's even fully adapted to that crazy game of football. And I have to chat to this wonderful gentleman alongside me about it because we need to know what Ahsan thinks because we need a calm head from a stormy game of football. Ahsan, welcome back to the channel, mate. How you doing? You good?
I'm really good. Nobody ever needs to know what I think about anything, mate. Trust me.
I do actually. I do. I enjoy it. I enjoy always hearing from the head honcho. Did we decide to direct football? I don't know what you are. You're definitely some form of director of football at 9320. If you don't know what 9320 is, you're an absolute idiot, but we'll forgive you anyway. 9320 is you're not an idiot. You're just uneducated. So we're here to do that. 9320 is a wonderful podcast. There's a link in the comments right now. Just drop my mouse 1 second.
Wait, did you fall off your chair as well?
The chair fell over. This is going well, isn't it, lads? This is. Oh, and I'm just
doing a comedy show today,
and I think I just got rid of you on the video as well. So there we go. This is going wonderfully. What have I just done there? Jesus. Right, everyone. Right,
should we start again?
Yes, chaotic as yesterday's game. Perfect, Thomas. Exactly. I pinned the top comment is a link to 9320 player. Go and give it a subscribe. Go and for the cost of a coffee, you get loads of wonderful podcasts from loads of honest, sincere, passionate, and informed Blues over there. The team is wonderful. Their team is incisive, and there's no bullshit over there as well, which I love about it. You'll get. Brilliant analysis, brilliant from the heart analysis and from the head as well, which is what I think all football discussions should be, from the heart and from the head. Yeah. I think it matters to have both. Ahsan, anything to add about 9320?
No, just everything you said was absolutely spot on. Go check it out if you haven't already.
I've spammed the comments with it.
Excellent.
It's linked as well.
I'm going to send you my our SoundCloud link as well, because people don't have to sign up. They can go to SoundCloud and listen to the first 15 minutes of any of our paid podcasts, and then they get an idea of what it is that we do. So that by the time they,
I'll put it. Jesus, it's just you just suddenly clicks what you've just done. I'm going to put it. I'll put it in the comments as well. There you go. There's
Thank
the
you.
SoundCloud. Right, guys. Anyway, chaos aside.
Right.
That was basically a summation of last night. Look, full time last night or during the game, where was your head at? How did you settle? How did the dust settle for you after that game of football?
I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not often, like City the last few years have been accused of being boring, right? And so yesterday was anything but boring. I think that the other thing is, I think it's rare that we come up against teams that press like Chelsea pressed, but also that play with the bravery and the quality that Chelsea played with. And it made it feel like a really high level game in a way. Now, okay, there was a lot of individual errors, and I think that defensively, probably both managers will be pretty unhappy with how they felt that their teams defended in moments, because it wasn't like, the weird thing is that the game, I felt as though the game swung from like really high level to like comedy in moments. So it wasn't like the whole game was comedic. It was just that there were these moments where on both sides you'd see like a defender just doing something really bad.
Yeah.
And then when you've got the quality of attackers that was on the pitch, that stuff was always going to get punished.
I absolutely agree. I mean, it felt that way, didn't it? I mean, I know we don't like to talk about stuff like the weather, but I do think stuff like that does play into it. It was horrific, you know, like it was raining, it was hard, and I think players were just cold and I think the atmosphere at Stamford Bridge as well. I thought Stamford Bridge it sounded electric. I wasn't there, but it sounded like it was really raucous, and you could tell Chelsea were up for this game. And essentially, sometimes a game, because of the conditions, because of the atmosphere, because of maybe certain individuals on the pitch, or whatever, it just becomes a slugfest. And I guess at some point, you just have to adapt to the game and just sort of make sure you don't lose. And Pep said, there was a quote where he said to Lilo something like, "Oh, this is." When Rodri scored, I can't remember the exact quote, but he was sort of implying this game isn't over yet. You know, this is that kind of game of football. And I think sometimes when you've been around football long enough, like Pep has, you just sort of. You have to sort of ride the storm. You smell it, and like, it's just sometimes football just descends into chaos, and like you can't look. Pep's the greatest controller in world football, but he can't control everything all the time. Every now and then you will have a game like that, won't you? Every now and then you'll have a game where a team like Chelsea haven't been great, but they found a bit of themselves last night, and I think you could tell that they felt emboldened by it. And he's right. Chelsea is still Chelsea. And ultimately, if Chelsea are on form, that means something because they know who they are and they still have quality players and they've got a quality manager and they do have the atmosphere at Stamford Bridge because it's a small, tight stadium when they're up for it. And I think the way out I was frustrated at moments in the game, but 10 minutes after the game, I was like, well, I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. It is what it is. It's just some things are out of your control and you've got to. I kind of wish I enjoyed it more. I admire that you could enjoy it. Like I think I was too. I guess I'm too caught up in the live comments and people getting frustrated and whatever, and I can't take my head out of it a little bit. But ultimately, yeah, that was my conclusion was, well, we've got another tough game out of the way, and we're still top of the table. And I think that is like
very much so.
I do think I look at the calendar and go, that could be a tricky game. That could be, and it's usually the big teams, and the away games or whatever. And the more we tick off, Arsenal away, United away, Chelsea away. I know United's not a tough away game, but it's still one you look at and go, no, it's Old Trafford, and you're still top. That's a result, right?
I think so. I mean, I think if we'd have said at the start of the season that we walk in at this international break at the top of the league, having scored the most and we conceded the least still after yesterday. I don't know.
We were close.
I don't know where that stat lands, but you see what I mean? Like, I think at the start of the season, if I'd have said this is where we'll be now, I think most people would have taken it, particularly with the De Bruyne and the Stones injuries at that moment at the very start of the season. And then if you look, I just think that we've not hit top gear. We've managed our way through this first part of the season without dropping too many points but also without being at our best. And I think that for me bodes well. I think this team generally, they're built to peak after the new year, or maybe December, January onwards, that they're built to peak. And so what you want, it actually is to be not too far away from the top at that point. If you can go in, if we can go into Christmas top of the league, that'll just make me even more confident that we'll end up winning the league. And I don't think. Go on.
No, you carry on. I thought you'd pause. Crack on.
I was just going to say, I don't think that there's too much to take away from yesterday, insofar as I wouldn't try and read too much into it and try and extrapolate it outwards. I think that it was just sometimes you have weird games in a season. Do you know what I mean? And I think that it was just one of those evenings, one of those games that it's not a pattern for the season. And it's not something that, I think that we could probably argue that over the last few years, Ruben Diaz has probably been our most consistent defender. And so if he's not having a great game, well, that's not a normal thing. That's not something that you go, oh, well, look, that's a problem because, look, Ruben Diaz wasn't good again. I don't view it like that.
No, I agree. I think that's fine. I think it's fine that, well, not fine, normal. Normal that a player like Ruben Diaz, like, my general view of football is very simple. Like, any player in a team can get away with having a bad game if everyone else does all right, But you can't get away with it when multiple players just have a bad day. Like, that is just when you're Manchester City. Multiple players having a bad game is just really rare because we have too many quality players. But every now and then the stars will align where too many players are sloppy on the same day. And what you get is that. And then, to be fair, they were sort of bailed out by the forwards, who obviously scored 4 goals too. But there is an element of like this. Most games, someone will have a bad game, but you just don't really probably notice because everyone else is 7, 8 out of 10 around or whatever. And not say a bad game, maybe a slightly lesser game by their standards, and it's just sort of masked by everyone else probably. Sort of not bailing them out because that's the wrong word, but just doing their thing. And it's sort of fine that if one day Doku has a quiet game, it doesn't matter if Foden and Alvarez are firing. Likewise, if Haaland doesn't have a great game, it doesn't matter if Doku's playing great or whatever. It's just how football is, and that's why it's 11 players and why it's so important. But yesterday, there's too many players, and it can happen when it all just aligns for various reasons, whatever. Too many players at a poor game. That won't happen often. As you said, it doesn't happen often. We don't see it often, which is why we win leagues and why we win. It won't. I presume it won't happen against Liverpool. I can't imagine 4 or 5 players having a really poor game by their standards. I presume because of it and because they're winners, they'll use that as a chance to focus and and go like, well, we don't do that again. And that's why they are the best at what they do, because they make a mistake once, but they won't do it back to back to back because they're too good for that. And Pep will understand that dynamic as well. But what I was going to say before when I unintentionally interjected, and I don't believe this self, and I think Devil's Advocate is a lazy way of just sort of putting a point out that you believe but you want to throw it out there, but you don't want to put yourself to it. But I genuinely don't believe this is true. But it's a question I've been thinking about. We talk about, City getting going after winter because of what we usually do. It's something that someone said to me once on Twitter, and it did actually make me go, interesting. Is there still enough of this Manchester City DNA side there to are we confident this side is going to do that? Because there's a lot of change in this side right now. Do you think there's enough of this City over the past few years here still to get going again? Do you know what I mean by that? Because it is
yes,
different, isn't it?
I see where the question comes from. I guess the way I look at it, right, is that generally season on season, there tends to be a different player who kind of steps up. Do you know what I mean? Like you kind of feel like it's not always the same player. It's not like every season in the run-in, Kevin De Bruyne becomes the best version of Kevin De Bruyne. It's like across the midfield and the attack, there's always one or two lads each season who have their moment, right? And so it's not really about, in a weird way, it's about how the collective gives a platform to individuals. Yeah. So if we're collectively consistent in the things that we're meant to do, and collectively they all get to 7 out of 10, then what happens in the run-in is that one lad or two lads suddenly playing at 8 or 9 out of 10 for a month, for 2 months. It just it massively changes the dynamic, because then suddenly you've got a rhythm and a consistency of winning games, and you can see the finish line. And I actually think that's the biggest thing. That's probably what's the most impressive thing about this Pep team, is that when they can see the finish line, they get better. They don't get worse. They don't normally, inexperienced nerves, the pressure of, oh my God, that's the finish line, but we need to keep winning. That tends to make teams go into their shell. I don't think it does that with this City team. I think that Pep's constructed a mentality where when they can see the finish line, they actually get stronger. They actually go, you know what? Today, we can have a bad day because I'm going to go and score a world-class goal, and that goal is going to win the game. And it doesn't matter who the player is.
I agree. I think the one thing I've noticed is it feels like there's been a shift, and a treble will do that for you for what it's worth. But I feel like there's a general feeling of almost acceptance, and it's not just from City fans. You can see it around the media, whatever. We talk about you see. Real Madrid have it, that aura or whatever, where you're like, a young Brazilian lad can join, and all of a sudden he's Vinicius Junior is a superstar because he's playing for Real Madrid, and he's like, it's just like the club and who you are can drag you up. And I think Man City are getting an element of that now, where they'll be won for so long that people can pretend that it doesn't exist. It's from mainly rival fans who can't accept it. But this City side is a winning machine, and it's becoming a part of where players join. They buy into it because that is the atmosphere, that is the culture that City have built, and Guardiola has built. And Guardiola is, of course, he's the foundation, he's the rock at the bottom of all this. He's still there, so I don't see any reason why these new lads won't buy into that eventually, because they'll look around and see that everyone else is focused who already was there. And I agree. I think it's become a culture as long as you have good enough players. And I think you're right about there'll be one of the attackers, and I think we have the players for that. I think you look at hopefully a returning De Bruyne, a Phil Foden, who I think we'll touch in a bit, by the way, but I think Phil Foden's playing excellently right now. You've got Bernardo. I can definitely see the kind of guy who could pop up with some big goals for us right now. Hopefully Jack or Doku or whatever. Holland, Alvarez. I think we have the players for someone to step up and win us those games. Do I think we've got them? Yeah, I think we do. I don't know who it's going to be yet, because that's the beauty of it, isn't it? But can I imagine Kevin coming back and in a big semi-final whipping across him for Haaland to score? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
If he gets back, if Kev gets back on the pitch this season in a good way, can you imagine the point that he's going to want to prove? The lad will have been, and the interview that he did a few weeks ago in Belgium, one thing that he said, which actually really made me quite excited and positive about his eventual return, was he said maybe the blessing in disguise with this injury is I've not had this long off from football almost ever in my career. So he's going to have because one is the sort of the physical impact of playing games relentlessly, but probably the thing we don't talk about enough is the mental impact of playing games relentlessly. Because I think there's a huge difference between, for example, Phil or Erling playing at their age loads of games because they're young and they're at the start-ish of their career.
Yeah.
So there's very little mental impact. But you fast forward to you get to Kev's age, you got 3 kids, you got a wife, you got family, just your circumstances change so dramatically between the age of 21, 22 and 30, 31 that it's a completely different kettle of fish. And so to be able to have that long break, to have that time with your family, to feel almost like you've been given an extended holiday, but also to know I can get better and at the end of this I can come back and I can play again. I think that'll be huge, and I'm genuinely excited to see how Kev comes back, because I think he will come back. It'll take him, like any player, it'll take him a few games to get back up to speed, but once he's up to speed, I think he'll have a big impact certainly in the final third of the season. So yeah, I mean, I think that I'm okay with the idea of people being critical of individuals, right? Because I know that, like, I feel as though since last night there's been this quite big divide. Like, some people are just like, how dare you criticize anybody in this team? And then you've got other people that are just like, that was a Diaz disaster class. And in a way, it's fine. Like, part of the narrative around football is that, look, if somebody plays shit, then it's going to get called out. And it doesn't matter how much credit is in the bank. A game is a game, and you either analyze the game that you've watched in front of your eyes, or you go, well, I'm not going to bother analysing anything because these lads won the treble last season. So it's...
No, I agree with that, and I entirely agree with that. Because I feel, I even tweeted about the credit in the bank thing, but the way I feel is more, I guess, it's more just then extrapolating it further. Like acting like he's a problem. Like that's when it annoys me when people take 90 minutes and then presume it's a bigger problem. And
Can I ask you?
That's when, like, come on, like, go on.
So the question I've got for you, because it's really interesting, maybe about a month ago, in one of the sort of City group chats that we've got, somebody put the question up, like, is Diaz playing well? And I was like, well, I don't think he's been at his best, if I'm honest. And the general consensus was this season has not been by the standards that Ruben had set, he's not met them. So I feel yesterday that the criticism after his performance yesterday was probably the culmination of not great form, kind of getting worse rather than getting better. How do you view his season so far?
I don't think he's been bad. To be honest, when I look at the goal, we had the best defensive record in the league until yesterday, and look at the goals conceded. I don't think they were often his fault. They usually were just the middle was absolutely wide open. Right? There's been so many counter-attacking goals where we've just not had that control centrally, and Pep's done his thing where he's rotating the defenders an awful lot again, as usual. He's constantly changing it. Yosko's come in, of course. So there'll be Ake one day, there'll be Kanji the day. Stone's in and out constantly. Kyle Walker there, and I think Diaz he's been okay. But to be honest, I don't think many of our players this season have been fully great, and I honestly believe that the general level of most of the players, maybe one or two exceptions, has been all right, okay, like enough to get through, and I think the fact that we're top of the table might have sort of painted a false picture of how good we've been, because I think we've only been 6, 7 out of 10 this season.
I think that's
and I think that, like, we look at the top and we presume we must be playing excellently. I actually don't think we are. I think we're doing okay, and every now and then we do have moments where we show how good we are. But largely, I think Diaz has been probably sort of in the middle of a group of players who've been I think there's one or two exceptions, I think Phil is having a really quietly great season. I think he is. I think he's been, if he's not been 7 out of 10, he's been 8 or 9 out of 10. I think Phil's having that kind
100%.
of season. And I think, but Bernardo's had some recently very good games, though. I think he had a couple of quiet games at the start of the season as well. Alvarez, great month, but he's had a quiet month, I would say, Alvarez. At the same time, even though he got an assist second half, I think he's dropped off. Erling's had a mixed season. And then Stones has been barely there. Kovacic has been up and down. I look around, I think, has anyone had a great season yet? I don't think anyone has. I think Phil's probably the closest to that, I would say, who's been consistent. And I think Ruben is probably somewhere around that too. And I don't think he's the problem defensively. I think the midfield, the lack of control, and the general whole collective is they're all letting each other down to an extent. Like, I don't think I can blame Ruben Diaz or Kanji. And I remember someone saying about 3 weeks ago, Kanji was terrible. I can't remember which game it was, but I remember Kanji getting criticised. Then last night, Kanji came out with the one smelling of roses, from our defenders. And yeah, I get the frustration. And I think what we tend to do as fans, you jump around when things aren't great, and I do this too, by the way, because I do 5 things learned, and I realise I've talked about something else that's contradictory from 2 weeks ago, and it's human nature to do that. But we tend to look for the next. We're frantically looking around for a reason why things aren't great yet. So we focus on individual players, and eventually you realise it's just probably because the collective isn't there. The collective isn't actually pushing forward.
But, yeah, I think there is one thing that I think is probably worth a conversation, and I think that is that a little bit. I think the one thing that we haven't really spoken about, but in general around City, is how playing with Erling and Alvarez, how it actually has affected the midfield, right? And how with Stones there, I actually think it's fine, because I think Stones almost does the job of 2 midfield players. Now, I think, so Kovacic was injured yesterday, which is why he didn't start the game. So I think had Kovacic been fit, I think Kovacic would have started that game, and I think we wouldn't have seen one of Doku, Alvarez, or Foden, right? Because I just think that Pep will have. It's not in Pep's nature to go away to big teams and go all out attack. And that team, when you looked at it, it felt a little bit all out attack. But then when you think about it, he didn't really have a lot of options. It was basically Doku or Grealish. That was the only real decision that he could make, because I don't think Nunez has shown enough yet to be in that conversation. I think Alvarez, because of his form so far this season and how well he's done in the main, I can kind of understand why Pep's gone, well, you know what, if I don't have Kovacic, then I'm gonna go with this iteration, and we're gonna go all out attack. But I felt that you saw yesterday the downside of playing like that, playing with that selection of players, and basically playing with a second striker rather than playing with loads of midfielders.
So if Kovacic was fit, what would you have done? Would you have not played Alvarez? Is that what you're saying?
You know what I think Pep would have done? I think Doku wouldn't have played. I think Kovacic would have played, and it would have been a little bit more of Phil and Alvarez floating as 2 10s rather than... Because remember earlier in the season, they played a bit more centrally, Alvarez and Phil did. And I think maybe we would have seen a little bit more of that. I don't know, but my gut tells me that had Kovacic been fit, Pep doesn't pick the midfield that he picked yesterday, because we didn't have any control, and it was a lot to ask of Rodri. And it was very clear to me 10, 15 minutes into the game that the intensity of Chelsea's players generally, but also in particular, if you look at Conor Gallagher and Enzo and Raz and Palmer, right? The manner in which those 4 played, it felt like we were getting overrun in the middle of the pitch. It felt dead easy for Chelsea to... I mean, look, they played with a level of intensity that really reminded me of a Klopp team. They really did. Were. I think you have to give as much as you can go. Like, our players made individual errors. Errors come from pressure, and pressure comes from intensity from the opposition.
They looked like a bunch of early 20s lads, basically. There was a lot of energy.
And they were mad for it. They were absolutely mad for it. They were there. Like, if you think about it, after the goal, our first goal, the penalty, part of me sort of expected Chelsea to take a step backwards to go, oh my God, we're 1-0 down here. What we don't want to do is go 2-0 down. We're going to have to take a step back. And they did the opposite of that. They got more intense and they got more in our face. And I think that we didn't handle it. We couldn't handle it. And I think that part of that was they were getting too many players the other side of Doku, Foden, and Alvarez, and we needed somebody. Like, for me, it's very rare that you look at a game and you go, tactically, we've got this wrong here. And that's what it felt like to me. It felt like somehow Chelsea looked like they've got a man over everywhere and they're first to every second ball. And that generally tells me that from a positional point of view, something's off with City.
Yeah.
And you could see 25 minutes into the game, Guardiola and Lilo in deep discussion, and it was clear that the conversation was a tactical one about what's going on here. What do we need to? What needs to change for us to gain more control? So yeah, there's actually quite a lot that you can unpack. But just to go back to the beginning of what I said, I think the Alvarez Haaland thing is the thing, and the lack of Kovacic not being fit, and the sort of basically we don't have Gundo, and it's a weird way to put it, but we just don't have Gundo, right? And if Gundo's there, Gundo plays, and I think yesterday's game feels different on every level. And not to make it like a January conversation, but maybe it's something they look at in January, or maybe should have started Rico Lewis with Kovacic out. Maybe you should have put Rico in and taken one of the other lads, one of the attackers out, and used Rico to have that extra body and have that control. What do you think?
Do you think Rico would have excelled in a game like that? Because they're like, I don't know what we're not trying to say. It's hard to know because I don't know what Rico would be like in a game like that, because a game like that was sort of crazy. And congratulations, by the way, to Rico Lewis, England call up, which is obviously absolutely immense. I think anything like that for him is great. I think young players, the more football they get around, senior players, whatever, it's just good for them. And yeah, I'm surprised there wasn't Rico there as well. I think Alvarez is sort of the elephant in the room right now. I feel like, because his form has justified being in the team and he has been excellent, but. And I'm actually one of the advocates of, like, I think while there's no KDB, anyone who can create something out of nothing or score a wonderful goal, I think we sort of need that. But that's built on the idea of John Stones sort of being there too at the same time to help with the control. So if Stones is there and Rodri's alongside him, Alvarez, it makes sense. It's fine. He will get a shot away. He will get an assist. He will score a goal. And he did get an assist, fair to him. But without him there, I think like there's almost like there's too many steps of control that we lose. Like with Alvarez, we lose a bit. Without Alvarez and with no Stones, it's like a lot. Like all of a sudden, but it's just enough. I think you're right. If Stones is available, it's fine. We can get away with it. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a very different Manchester City for Liverpool. This is going to be fascinating to see what Pep does here. Like I'm going to presume Stones is not available.
Massively so.
And I would not be surprised if we do see, I don't know, he does absolutely fetishize control. He plays Kovacic and he plays Rodri and he plays Bernardo, and they're the central three or something like that. Then he plays Phil on the right and then he plays Grealish on the left. I would not be surprised to see him go really, really double down. He does something crazy. No, he's always been one to try things against Liverpool anyway. It's just his thing, and given what we've just seen, he's going to react to it. I don't know if it'll work. We'll have to find out. My gut actually weirdly tells me he's going to push Rodri a little bit further forward and let Bernardo and Kovacic, and Rodri's the most creative out of those three, weirdly, I think. When I talk, and I think he'll put Bernardo to buzz around and do a classic Bernardo box-to-box role with Kovacic sort of alongside him. Rodri will be deep nominally, but I think he'll get a license to push forward and ping the ball from 20 yards or play those little diagonals over the top, and I think he's going to do that. But that means Alvarez out of the team. I don't know. It's weird because I think Pep feels a bit of loyalty to Alvarez, rightfully so. I think he likes him, trusts him, because he's a player you can trust because he takes everything on. He's a little teacher's pet. But we're at a stage now where that you can't play like that against Liverpool. Liverpool, that was, as you said, that was almost very Klopp-esque, that performance. And we're seeing Liverpool right now, 1 point behind, sort of weirdly rejuvenated, but they have problems, but they also have a lot of flair going forward, and a lot. And I think Pep's going to look at that Chelsea game as sort of everything he doesn't want Liverpool's game to be. So what does that mean? It means changes. And I don't know what he's going to do, but I do think he's going to rip it up a little bit. Just how drastic.
I mean, look, I don't think there's a lot he can do. I don't think that there's a million options in the squad, because
Yeah.
I think the squad is small, and not only is it small, but you've got a couple of lads on the fringes that you kind of feel like you don't know where they are in the pecking order. It's funny because we started talking about it, and the more that I've listened to you talk and I've thought about it, I'm kind of disappointed. I think he missed a trick not giving Rico a start yesterday, because I actually think Rico would have excelled in a game like yesterday. Why do I think he would have excelled? Because of his composure. So the thing that Rico Lewis has above all else is like a maturity and a composure on the ball. He knows when to be safe and he knows when to push forward. And I think that you're almost. I just think it would have given us the control that we maybe lacked a little bit in the center of the park. And he could have played alongside Rodri. And I don't mind taking it. Like, I think my thing is that as much as I love Foden, Alvarez, Grealish and Haaland, or Foden, Alvarez, Doku and Haaland, I do think that playing with 4 attackers like that, I think you lose a little bit of control, for want of a better word, because I think that I think we lack a centre midfield option, basically. If we're saying that Rico ain't that guy in a big game, then I think that you hope that Kovacic is fit and you bring him in for one of those attackers, or you go and find a player that you think you can buy that will give you the.
Do you think they'll do
like
that? Do you think they'll go in January? Because I think there's a decent chance, you know. I just sense it. Like, I feel like Calvin Phillips is definitely going to go, and we really look. I know it's easy to talk about the one who got away. But I really do rate Paqueta. Like the more I've seen him this season, the more I'll be like, oh man, he's the actual one we needed. Like, he is the one we needed. Like, obviously it could have been Bellingham or Rice or whatever, but like of the others, and like Paqueta looks perfect right now. Goal threat, can play as a 6, can play as an 8, can play as a 10. Like, complete midfielder, incredibly good in tight spaces, great technical ability, a bit of fight to him. I'm like, oh, he would have been perfect. And I don't think City have closed that door. I really don't. But of course, there is that whole, you know, well, they're waiting for the conclusion, aren't they? For obvious reasons, and because you don't want to sign him. Right, he's out for a year now. Like, oh, okay, or whatever, because that's a lot of money to spend. But I do think City are considering it. This is based on absolutely nothing other than gut instinct, but.
Same.
I just get a feeling that there's an acceptance that Núñez is a project to an extent. Like, I feel like he's talented, but he's not the current control that they probably want. Kovacic, we'll see how good he's good in a year or two, but he's a decent player right now. Kovacic, you know, he's a good player, but he's not. I don't think he's the one that would. Put it this way, I feel like right now, if Sturridge's not there, we don't really know exactly who the strongest other partner is for Rodri, and I think like Pep is
absolutely,
and I think he wants probably something a bit more certain. And I think Paqueta would be that guy, but then Paqueta would need a bit of time to adapt. But I feel like he just would fit the City team, and maybe that's wishful thinking from my heart. But I feel like there is a chance, and especially if Phillips goes, because we can't deny that even though he's not been great, he's still a number on the bench, and you still have to have numbers because it's winter. You know, players get injured, and we're going to see a lot more injuries this season. We are seeing more injuries this season across the Premier League, and games are 10% longer. We play a lot of games. The squad is already small. Look, I know we don't often do January stuff, but something about it thinks it's not. I usually like it's 90% no, 10% yes. I think it's like 60-40 or something like that.
If they sell Phillips, look, it's very simple. If they sell Phillips, it'd almost be negligent not to go back into the market, because, like you say, the squad is already small. It's not just about bodies; it's about loads of things, including injuries. And we've seen how many injuries there've been in general this season. So. Look, I think the squad lacks, what I think we saw yesterday quite clearly, is that we don't have a midfielder other than Bernardo who can operate. Like, we need another player like Bernardo Silva, and that means we need another player who can operate in every phase of play at a high level. Yeah. So Bernardo, in his own defensive third, can operate at a really high level. It's very stable. Center of the pitch, obviously, he excels there. Final third, he's got quality, he's got control. He'll get you goals, not loads of them, but he'll get big goals, and he's got a knack, basically.
It's this Gundo you were describing it. That's another thing.
Exactly, but that's what I mean. That when we had Gundo and Bernardo, we had this thing of like the axis was there, and you can see why they wanted Paquetá. You can see why they looked at Eze. You can see why they wanted Bellingham, because I think what those three players have in common is that exact thing that I'm talking about, that they can operate in every phase of play at a really high level. And I think probably what holds Kovacic back a touch is that in final third, he doesn't have that level. So he's great in defensive actions and he's great in the center of the park, but final third, he doesn't bring a lot. And that kind of that's where the Alvarez thing comes in for me, because I think it makes perfect sense from Pep's point of view to go, I need that attacker. I need, I need the goals. Yeah. And particularly when you're playing with a guy like Erling, who you feel he needs a little bit more support in and around him. If you don't feel you've got a Gundo who can go and effectively go and become an extra attacker, all of this is this conversation is with the knowledge that Kev's not available too. So normally Kev would be available and he would also be able to do that job. So it's a little bit of a perfect storm in a way, with the Kev injury and Gundo leaving to put us in this position. But I don't think they're like, for me in a way, they're like proper luxury problems to have.
Yeah.
I think the other side of that, and you touched upon it, I want to talk about it a little bit more. I think Foden is maturing in front of our eyes. Yeah. I think Phil Foden is realizing the potential that we've thought he's had for a few years. And I think that
right now, doesn't he? He looks confident.
Yeah. He's playing at a level every game and every action is really high level. And for me, the most important thing is that the critique around Phil, and even from Pep, this idea that he's a bit too enthusiastic and he's a bit too aggressive in every action, and he's got to know when to play it safe and play backwards, and that horrible pause word. Well, I think he's showing that. I genuinely think that this season, and certainly the last month, you're seeing a Phil Foden who's taking the responsibility of being the playmaker in the final third, making things happen, getting goals, getting assists, not letting his head go down if something doesn't come off, trying things, but also knowing when to just pop it backwards, when to play it sideways, to have the spatial awareness around him, to not do anything too daft. And then also, if he decides, like there's that moment yesterday where he wriggles out from, like, it's like he's got like 3-4 lads around him, and he wriggles out, and it's like choosing a moment to take a risk like that, but then actually executing it. So actually not losing the ball, doing something risky and getting out the other side, and like having everybody go, wow. And I think that I'm just really pleased for him, because I think there was a moment around the Wolves game where I've seen a lot of people talk shit about Phil in a way that really made me angry.
Yeah,
like,
same.
it's just like, you can't older City fans will remember some of our lot have got a history with players who come through the academy and just treating them really badly.
Yeah.
And so for Phil, in my eyes, Phil Foden his performances get hyper-analyzed negatively every time he's not the best player on the pitch. And we don't have that with lads that cost 100 million. Do you know what I mean? People go out of their way to make excuses for Jack Grealish. Literally, people will bend over backwards, right, to make excuses for Grealish having a shit game, basically. And with Foden, it's the opposite. He can have a bad 20 minutes and people just jump on him immediately. So right now, when he's in this form, we got to talk about it more. I would argue he's probably one of the best players in the league right now. He's operating at a level like up there with Salah. There's not many other players. Sterling last night was incredible. Yeah. He's been one of Chelsea's best players this season. Phil is up there.
No, I absolutely agree, and I think Phil's been having a wonderful season, and I think he's stepping up. And he looked, to be honest, I still want to see him more central. I think he's absolutely excellent there. And I think you're right in terms about the criticism. It's absolutely overplayed in general. I think a lot of it I think a lot of it comes from a place where people aren't probably good enough at articulating why they feel a certain way. Like, I think, to be honest, I think we all know how good Phil can be, and I think some of that feeds into it. Where when you see him put a decent performance, I think we know I think we all know it. His ceiling is Kevin De Bruyne. I think he's that. I think he can be that special, and I think a lot of the problems around Phil have been not really of his own making. He's been very much a sacrificial player, right? Phil, you're a false nine now. Phil, now you're a right winger. Phil, now you're a left winger. And I think there's also an element of he feels like he's been around for a long time, and I still think we forget that he's still reasonably young in football terms. You know, he's only 23 years old, and he's had to learn. Like, Guardiola obviously wants him to be something. Guardiola, he talked about, you know, like there was a quote about 2 months ago which felt very telling for me, and I think he was on the most insightful pieces of analysis of where Phil Foden is in Guardiola's head now, when he talks about how he wants him to be able to play alongside Rodri. And what he means by that is, as you said earlier, he wants to play a complete player who can play in all phases of the pitch. Like, he wants Phil to reach that intelligence that he trusted with Andres Iniesta or Xavi, where he's like, I trust you, I trust you in the way that I trusted probably David Silva, Gundogan and Bernardo, to know that if you're deeper, you will put that in. And once you unlock that with your natural ability, all of a sudden you can go anywhere and do what you want. And I think that's what Pep's trying to get him to. And I think Phil understands that for what it's worth. And I think this is probably the reason why it's been frustrating sometimes to watch Phil, because Pep's giving him all these lessons, all these things to do it, because he's trying to get him to a level that instinctively many of us probably wouldn't push. We'd be like, just let him be a 10, let him be a 10. But Pep wants more than that. And I think he's right, because Pep knows how good he could be. He's saying, I want you to be Iniesta. I want you to be that good. I want you to be one of the greatest midfielders of all time. And at this age, Iniesta, around 23, very similar players, you know, like Iniesta wasn't like this perfect, complete player, you know, and I know he's a lazy comparison because it's Pep and so on. It makes sense. But I think what Pep's trying to do to him, I think it is coming through. And I think all these lessons learned, and it takes me also back to another quote about John Stones recently, Josko Vardiol, when Pep was talking about, someone said, can Josko Vardiol do the Stones role? I understand why everyone, myself as included, has said that. But what they don't understand is it's not ability that makes you do that. It's experience and time. And he talked about Stones. He said, we've never thought he could do it at one point. But it took 7 years, several seasons to understand how to learn to play this system. And that's what we probably need to consider with Phil as well. Like, the best version of Phil Foden is not going to appear in 1 or 2 years. It takes many years to become this complete, well-rounded individual. And I compared Stones yesterday on my stream to that evolvement of Stones. Is a bit like in the Matrix when Neo all of a sudden just sees everything. He's like, oh my god, it's just unlocked, and he sees the patterns of play and he's doing that, he's going like that, whatever. It's that they have that moment in players when they reach a level of clarity with the system, and you just see football so much easier. And Gundogan got there under Guardiola, Fernandinho did, but they got there after many years, and David Silva got better, and Kevin De Bruyne got better. Stones has done it, and I think Phil is about to do it as well. I really believe he's about to, but it just takes time. And that's the thing where I'm really, really excited, because I think like Phil is unlocking that understanding of football in a broader sense, and that just comes once again from experience. And he forgot a couple of years ago he was making mistakes away from football because he was being a 20-year-old lad. He was being a bit of an idiot every now and then, and I've met Phil multiple times. Lovely, sweet lad, but he was still a stupid little boy every now and then. I'm sure he'd admit that himself. But as he goes past that, as Guardiola's always said, you have to have those seasons, and the ones that bounce back from that and find out who they are, they're the ones that, you know, become geniuses. I think Phil has that, and I think we're seeing this season, and I think you're right, we're seeing a maturity and acceptance of his new role in this team. Gundogan has gone, Jesus has gone, Sterling has gone, Mahrez has gone. Phil, we need you. Now we need you. You are unquestionably one of our key players, and I think he realises that. You know, he's a dad to a 4-year-old boy who's beautiful and wonderful. He's settled in his life. You know, he's got another little kid on the way. He looks to me that he's just clicked. This is my team. This is my club. He stepped up, and I think a lot of it is the understanding, the experience, and time. And I think that's why I always harp on about, like, just because a player has the ability doesn't mean they can do the role. And I talk about giving players time. Guardiola does, because Pep just teaches it different. He just teaches it different, and I think Pep knows and understands that Phil is getting there. And last night I saw Phil. I knew he played well, but I watched the compilation back. I was like, oh, he's even better than I realised last night. He was aggressive, he was brave, he was technical, he was intelligent, and like to do what he did and still have 93% pass completion as well. Like, mate, it's elite stuff. I'm excited. Ahsan, I'm excited because I think we are seeing Phil become that guy. And
he's another level. He's just another level. I can't, like, the level of, you know, you talk about Xavi and Iniesta and like playing Phil deeper, and actually, the problem that Guardiola's got, and I think if you sit him down and ask him, he'll say, yeah, it's true. It is a problem. Problem he's got is Phil is such a goal threat. He's a goal threat in a way that Xavi and Iniesta never were.
Absolutely.
The problem Guardiola's got is if I play Phil Foden deeper, I've lost the Phil Foden goal threat up there. And you're seeing right now.
I don't think he wants to. I think he just wants him to be able to. I think he wants to see that way he understands the game. Like, I don't think Pep ever wants Phil to be number 6, but I think he wants to trust him to see the picture. You know what I mean? Like, maybe don't be surprised. But I think that's the point where, like, when he says that, I think people interpret it as the wrong way. Like, no, he's not going to turn him to DM, but he wants him to see the game like a DM and also see the game like an attacking midfielder, because those players, they are the geniuses. They are your Philip Lahms. They are your Iniestas. They are your David Silvas. They are the ones that time remembers, and they are more than just, a great midfielder. They're the ones that, I think you look at him and go, he's got the skill set of Mahrez or whatever, but then he's like, yeah, but Pep knows he can be more than just a great winger. He can be a complete player, and I think we are seeing signs, and I think it's really exciting. I can't wait. Ahsan, I've run out of time, mate. I've run out of time, unfortunately. I'm going to go and grab the little one. But it's been a pleasure. And I think, to be honest, that was a lovely way to end it anyway. Waxing lyrical about one of our own. And
absolutely.
And I think we're on the verge of something special with Phil. I really think we are. And I think, to be honest, we're third of the way season. What would you give it a rating so far, this third way through?
7 out of 10. We're top of the league.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We've been, like you said, we've been away at the Emirates, been away at Old Trafford, been away at Stamford Bridge, still top of the league. Scousers after the international break. Right, I'm going to leave you with this one. Would you take a point?
A home?
Yes. Would you take a point?
I wouldn't be upset with a point.
I'd take the point.
Yeah, probably would.
I'd take the point.
I want to acknowledge all the super chats, by the way. Cena says, follow your content for years. Keep what you're doing. Big love to you, mate. And someone was super chat about the quality of the stream, saying something wrong. Sayak, mate, I don't know what's going on, and I'm not sure, because I get OBS. It tells me the stream, no drop frames, and YouTube, I watch it back and it looks fine on my phone and everything like that. And so I'm not sure what's going on there, mate. Maybe it's just, I don't know. Unfortunately, mate, I can't help you there, but it seems fine at my end, But anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget, of course, check out 9320.
Yes, cheers.
Once again, I put a link in the description. You can check it, of course. Go to the website, and you can check out on SoundCloud as well. I'll put a link to the SoundCloud right now. 1 second. Wonderful stuff over there, from passionate, informative blues. As you can see from obviously chatting to Ahsan for the last 45 minutes, this is the kind of stuff you get over there. It's wonderful stuff. Ahsan, thank you very much for coming on the channel, mate.
Cheers, Stu. See you later.
Watching in a bit. Bye-bye.